Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Down Syndrome Center podcast. As always, I am your host, Dr. Kishore Velody, and we are going to be talking about a topic today that is so important. We see a lot of challenges that people with Down syndrome have when it comes to physical activity and exercise, and sometimes we don't know why those things might be. But today I thought it would be great to have on an expert in this field. Scott Quaife is going to be joining us today. I'll have Scott introduce himself here in just a moment to talk about, we're going to be talking about Down syndrome and specifically physical activity, exercise, and ways that we can look at exercise in people with Down syndrome and make that and perhaps identify barriers that we can address. And so I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Scott, why don't you do this for our audience? Tell us who you are, what you do, and why you love working with our population.
All right, my name is Scott Quaife, and I am the Health and Wellness Coordinator for Down Syndrome Innovations, which is based in the Kansas City area. And we are a lifespan service provider for all ages. So we have a BCBA on staff, an SLP, an OT. We have a whole team. We even have a job coach, like a whole team of staff that can work to serve across the lifespan. And as my role, I get to not only program, but also implement all types of physical activity for our individuals. And then also I'm working to create community partnerships in Kansas City to expand our reach. So, and the question about what I enjoy most about working with people with Down syndrome, that might be the easiest question you asked me this whole time, because it fills me with joy to be able to train individuals with Down syndrome and help them improve their physical health, because I know exercise is going to be something that's going to add years to their life. And it's not lost on me that I get to be a part of that. And I also really enjoy being able to change the narrative about what is physically capable of for people with Down syndrome. And I get to work with adults every day, and I want more people to know what they're capable of. I think people will be amazed to see that there are very few limitations truly when it comes to physical health.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. So I had my own experience a few months ago. My wife forced me to go to the PCP. I'm a doctor, but I don't like going to the doctor. And so at the end of the visit, as always, he said, you know, it would be great if you could eat healthier and exercise more. And I took that advice and I thought about it on the way home, and that's pretty much as far as it got. So my question for you is, in people with Down syndrome specifically, are there areas or common conditions that we see in Down syndrome that affect their potential abilities in doing, or maybe people suspect might affect their abilities in performing physical activities?
Yeah, there's a handful of different conditions that are either almost universally diagnosed with people with Down syndrome or very common in this population. And as I go through these, I would love to hear like your thoughts on each of them. But first is joint laxity. And so for people that maybe have heard this term before, it just means that they have a lot of looseness in the ligaments. They have just a little bit of extra flexibility. It's not just a Down syndrome condition. It's something you see dancers, gymnasts, anyone that just seems really flexible. They have that hypermobility, that joint laxity that allows them to just go into larger ranges of motion. And where this can get a little complicated for people with Down syndrome is they often don't have the strength to support those joints, which can lead to some soft tissue injuries. They have some wear and tear on their joints because they don't have the structure to support as they move. And they also can just not be able to be as efficient with their movements because of that. And it also can compromise coordination and even their ability to maintain good posture. So this is what you see.
Definitely. We see that one quite a bit in clinic. We've done a few podcasts looking at with physical therapists and orthotists and just talking about joint laxity and really how it does impact. One area we see that a lot in the ankles, lower extremities a lot, like ankles and knees, where it seems that, and the way that the parents or the patient themselves might describe it is, I just get tired. I don't want to do those longer walks. That's kind of what you're talking about here, right?
Yeah, that definitely is a play in there. And so as I go through this list, something that I want to make known is a lot of people listening, they probably have heard of joint laxity. They probably have heard of some of these other conditions I'll be talking about, but I'm going to be addressing them through a lens of physical health through fitness, and so why each of these conditions specifically impact their ability to move. So,
Great. What else?
next,
What other conditions do you see?
yeah, so flat feet
Yeah.
is something else you see a lot. Oh, and it also that leads to overpronation, which is something that honestly is kind of a problem across the board, not just for Down syndrome, but just in the general population. People aren't taking care of their feet. They're not wearing shoes that are supportive enough, and that it can, and we know people with Down syndrome, almost all of them have flat feet, and because of that flat foot position, and again, this is actually due to in part to that joint laxity and the foot, that ankle rolls inward, and then it puts a lot of stress on the ankle, and then that trickles up to the knee, to the hip, to the low back, upper back. Now you have neck pain because your foot is not properly supported. And this is one I think I'm really passionate about, because the fix isn't super complicated. It's something simple as getting a better pair of fitting shoes. Shoes that are more supportive are a good way to combat that flat foot, that overpronation. So, yeah.
And I think that so many of our perhaps our providers may not realize that how important that foot structure is to the rest of the whole body. I love how you describe that all the way, from foot up to neck. You could think being interrelated that way. So that's great. Yeah.
I had a chance to share this presentation a little while back, and one of the parents was able to take their self-advocate, but 2 days later, when I saw him for the next exercise session, he had a brand new pair of shoes that were supportive. I was like, okay, see, that's what I'm talking about, because you were able to listen and have a quick takeaway that was able, you don't have to do intensive physical therapy to make this change. This is something you can do relatively easily. Something else I think is really interesting is low bone density. And that's something that you see in people with Down syndrome. It's interesting because not only do they have lower bone density, but they actually lose that bone density at a quicker rate as they age than the general population. And what's something is interesting to me is, in 1960, the lifespan for people with Down syndrome was about 10. And now here we are, someone with Down syndrome can live into their 60s. Mm-hmm. And so now that we've increased that lifespan, now we're actually encountering osteoporosis. It's one of those good problems that we've come onto, is that now our adults with Down syndrome, they have to worry about their bone health. And so being able to do things like resistance training, making sure they're getting plenty of vitamin D, a lot of these things that can actually improve that bone density, and exercise is part of improving that bone density that we already know is low to begin with.
That's great. Yeah. And certainly something that we're seeing, you're right, as the adult population continues to exceed anywhere near where we were. One of my colleagues would say that if we all who didn't have Down syndrome had the same increased life expectancy, we'd be living into the 300s. And so it's been quite a change, you're right, since the 40s, 50s, 60s. So yeah.
I think it's fun because now that we have improved the lifespan, now we need to worry about how we improve the quality of that lifespan, and how do we address these issues that are relatively new to us in the Down syndrome population, because we're now really just now being able to fully experience them because they're living so routinely longer. So
yeah. Please. Yeah, I was going to say, are there other conditions? Yeah.
Yeah, something else that we see a lot, and you spoke to this before, sleep apnea, and that's something that oftentimes people, since it's a little bit indirect from being physically active, it's kind of overlooked. But a lot of people don't really enjoy exercising, going to the gym when they're well rested, when they're well rested. And I guarantee, if you were interrupted in your sleep hundreds of times potentially throughout the night, you're definitely not going to want to feel like exercising. And so if we know a lot of our individuals with Down syndrome aren't getting good quality sleep, that's going to affect their energy levels the next day, their ability to concentrate, to focus. And that's something that I see a lot that is impacting their desire to want to be able to move. And I think that is definitely overlooked because it's not directly physically connected. So
definitely. Yeah. Any other conditions, or what do you think?
Well, just one more that I want to share. Low VO2 max is a huge one. We see that a lot, that they just have a lower threshold for how they're able to get their VO2 max up. VO2 max, for those that aren't aware, is just a really it's a complicated measure, just basically of how physically aerobically trained you are, how good of conditioning you have. And we see like the top distance runners, marathon runners, cyclists, they have VO2 maxes off the charts. And the general population is quite a bit lower, but people with Down syndrome are even quite a bit lower than that. And a figure that I saw in a research paper that was just blew my mind is that so a relatively healthy individual with Down syndrome in their early 20s has the aerobic capabilities, the VO2 max of a 60-year-old with heart disease.
Wow.
And that shows where you're starting from, even with someone that seems to be pretty healthy and pretty young, good shape with Down syndrome. They are already at a really reduced capacity. And so, as you're speaking earlier, how they feel tired. Mm-hmm. Imagine when you're walking with your loved one with Down syndrome, and they are struggling to get around the block, and you think, well, you know, they're 25. This shouldn't be a problem. But you're walking next to potentially a 60-year-old with heart disease when it comes to their aerobic capacity. It's encouraging to know that this can be improved. They're not destined to have this lower conditioning, but it's helpful for parents, for loved ones to know kind of where they're coming from, so that we can work to improve that.
So yeah, you're talking about ways that we can improve these things, and I'm very interested in thinking about how does exercise play a role in helping with some of these conditions that we've been talking about?
Well, I see this is a great question, because I think a lot of parents that I've talked to, they feel like, well, my son or daughter, they have Down syndrome. Maybe exercise just isn't for them. They have all these things that make it too hard for them to exercise. They might get hurt. I'll tell you what, the worst case scenario of not exercising is far worse than by playing it safe. And it's like, well, we don't want to risk getting injured, because now we're destining them to a life of sedentary, being on the couch, not moving. And then we know that there's a lot that comes with that we want to avoid. So physical activity is not the problem, it's the answer, I believe. Exercise can actually directly address a lot of these conditions that we just spoke to. And by moving more, by being able to gain some strength, some of that aerobic conditioning, we can actually combat these conditions, so that as we age, as we go through life, now we're not just living longer, but we're actually experiencing more. We're actually able to do the things that we want to do. So yeah, I think exercise is a huge part of that. I have an individual that I've been able to train for the last year, and when I started working with him, I mean, he couldn't really even walk around the block without just being completely gassed. And it's been an incremental progress. We've been able to improve over the last year. And he's got a golf tournament that's coming up for Special Olympics, and it's a course that doesn't allow golf carts, and so he's going to have to walk. And now he is one of our fastest, strongest walkers when we go out in the community. And it's just been really cool to see this transformation over the last year. And this is why I'm doing what I do. It's not when we're in the gym, oh, well, now you can lift more, or now you can, it's got to translate into the real world. It's all well and good if you gain strength, but how does that strength actually changing your life? How is it actually changing what you're able to do and all the things you want to do? And so now for this gentleman, he's going to be able to experience this golf tournament, walk the course, because he's taken the time to improve his physical health.
Wow. So exercise was a big part of getting him to that point, is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. Why do you think that it's even more critical than for someone with Down syndrome to maintain that level of physical activity than perhaps someone in the general population?
That's a great question. I mean, people with Down syndrome, we know they're starting from a lower place. Like, we know that there's a number of factors that are already built in that are working against them. And so they're going to have to actively combat those. And people with Down syndrome, as they get older, maybe take a 35-year-old man with Down syndrome who has worked really hard up to that point to gain a job. He's worked at a job he loves his job. He has his own apartment. He lives independently. He's worked quite a while to gain the skills he needs to have this lifestyle for himself, and he takes a lot of pride in it. And if he is not actively taking care of his health, if he's not doing the things he needs to do to be able to stay healthy, maybe this starts to affect his ability to continue the job tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And now if he's no longer able to fulfill these tasks for his job, maybe his boss says, I'm sorry, I can't employ you anymore. He loses his job, and that crushes him. And now he doesn't have maybe the money to pay for his apartment. And now he has to move back into his parents' house. And so you see how really quickly just his physical health, his ability to be able to do the things that he needs to do, just really crumble his whole quality of life. And so unfortunately, people with Down syndrome don't always have the luxury of being able to do a desk job. A lot of the work that someone with Down syndrome might be doing is more physical. They might have to be standing on their feet. They might have to be carrying things. So their health, their physical health, is a really strong component to their overall independence. And so I want to promote their physical independence.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you think about it that way, it does. It plays such a huge role in everything that we want for people with Down syndrome to have the opportunities for job force, for independent living, all those things, and how it's all connected. A question I have for you is, we're talking about exercise and physical activity. What does it look like for somebody with Down syndrome? Let's say the person you were telling us earlier about the golfing that they're going to be doing, like, is it like that you're taking them through like an intense NFL style workout, or what is the exercise actually looking like?
Well, that's great. So I believe in functional fitness and making it be whatever meets that individual where they're at. It could be someone who is wanting just to improve their basic living skills. Might be someone that is wanting to train for a sport. Maybe they want to get stronger for a sporting event. Maybe they just want to be able to just gain some general strength that's going to be able to keep them healthy. So when I'm training someone, I am customizing that program to address maybe some general limitations they have. Maybe I want to improve some overall body strength. Maybe they need a little bit more cardiovascular endurance, but then maybe we might also address some situations that they're encountering on a regular basis. Maybe they live on a second floor apartment and they need to be able to get up and down those stairs a little easier. So we might do some things that give them some little more of that strength to be able to do those functional daily tasks that they need. But no, we're not doing anything too crazy. It's basically just incremental progress. We start at the basics, and if they can show that they can handle the fundamentals, then we just gradually increase, and now we have individuals that are doing much more advanced movements because they have gained that competency and they've gained that strength. And I want to encourage anyone that is thinking about doing something like this, that it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen right away. But if you stay true to it, if you keep working at it, and you take the time to gain that, you'd be surprised what anyone is able to do if they continue. So
is what you're doing, is that something that you think is available in places really all over, or is it pretty specific? Do insurances cover it, like that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I think there's a myth about exercise, that you have to have a gym membership, that you have to have all these different, a lot of fitness equipment, that you have to, have all these different things to be able to make fitness happen. And I believe, especially when I am starting with my adults in my program, we're really just doing body weight exercises. We use very little equipment when we're first getting started, because a lot of them don't have that basic strength that they need to even be able to worry about doing any of these extra fancier things. And so just doing some body weight squats, doing planks, glute bridges, all these things that are even unweighted. The beauty about body weight exercises is they're extremely safe. We don't have to worry about them getting hurt really like you would if they were under load, because these are movements that the body is designed to do, and we're not adding any extra weight beyond what that body's already carrying. And so we're able to see safe progress from just doing exercises floor-based, and then graduating to body weight in a standing position. So yeah, just definitely want to squash that myth that you have to have all the fanciest gadgets to, and in a lot of ways those are really unnecessary. There's the squat is pretty tried and true. That's been around for a long time and it's not going anywhere.
And are the services that you provide, or someone doing something similar to you would provide, are those typically things that a medical insurer would cover, or is it just something like a family would just come to you for advice?
Well, I'm happy to say that at Down Syndrome Innovations, we offer a lot of our services either complimentary or heavily subsidized.
Okay.
So we make it as easily accessible. A lot of insurance programs, Medicaid, Medicare don't always cover those, and so we don't want that to be a barrier for people to receive our services. So we are able to offer our programming at a price that is not something that should be a barrier for people when you consider like what long-term benefits they're getting from it.
And for families that don't live nearby to where you guys are there resources that you would suggest, or areas where they could figure out, here's some simple exercises to perhaps start with your loved one with Down syndrome?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of developing some virtual programming, some Zoom workouts, and also creating some exercise videos that can be accessed remotely, so that the families and the self-advocates can do those exercises at home. Because I know transportation is one of the biggest barriers, if not the biggest barrier, to exercise, because if they don't have their parent, their loved one, to be able to take them to the gym, they're just not going to go. And I want them to be able to have access to that. You know, at the touch of a finger, they can go on and watch a workout video featuring other individuals with Down syndrome. I don't want them to see me doing it. I want them to see someone with Down syndrome that are doing these exercises and showing them, hey, look, I'm doing it. You can do it too.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I will definitely in the show notes include a link to Down Syndrome Innovations. And then when those videos start to come on, or opportunities to join come on for virtual programming, I think that would be great. So you mentioned one of the barriers, transportation. Are there other barriers that you see that impact perhaps the person with Down syndrome individually, but also just in the community, things that we see that are perhaps barriers?
Yeah, so I think the first barrier, besides transportation, is the motivation. It's sometimes that's not something that individual has grown up doing. They haven't been exposed to exercise at an early age. That's going to be, you're going to be having to fight gravity a little bit to get them to want to start exercising. So I can't stress enough to parents, the earlier you can start to create opportunities for exercise, showing that exercise can be a fun, rewarding, engaging thing. If you can get them to start doing that at a young age, then that's going to be something that they just do. They even think about, oh, I don't want to exercise. There's been studies that have shown that people that play sports in high school live longer. And that's not because they have magical powers now because they were the quarterback of the football team. It's because they, at a very important time in their life, they started creating those habits at that age, and now those are habits that they've carried on throughout their life. And that's no different, and probably even more so with this population. If we are able to expose them to exercise at an early age, they're going to be like, hey, exercise is fun, I like moving my body. And now that motivation piece is going to be a little bit easier. But I also think it's really helpful to have buy-in with friends, with family. Very few people enjoy exercising by themselves, but we ask people with Down syndrome, hey, go exercise, go work out, go do this. And then we often see mom and dad not doing it with them, their sisters, their friends not doing it with them. And so I think, especially when we're starting to really want to create those habits, like having people, it's a social experience. Like everyone enjoys having that partner, that workout buddy. So if you're trying to get your loved one to exercise, well, exercise with them, join in. And so I think the motivation is a potential barrier, but making it engaging, making it fun, making a game out of it. That's a lot of things I do for my workouts is I turn exercises into games. We might have a dice that we roll, and whatever number we land on is how many of that exercise we're going to do. We let them choose the exercise, some relays, some races. to make it more of a game than just true work. But then beyond that, we have the motivation part, the transportation part, but in the community, we are still working for that inclusion for people with Down syndrome to come in and to be able to exercise in a gym, in a yoga studio, and for it to be, I want that someday to just be like a normal thing. You just go into a yoga studio and there's 3 people with Down syndrome, and you're like, okay, cool. And it doesn't even strike anything of you. My mentor, Dustin Yancey, he has a gym called Bridge Fit here in Kansas City area, and he's done a lot to train individuals with Down syndrome. And he has a young man that has come to exercise in his gym with the other members and myself. And because of him being there, showing some of the other members like what he can do, how awesome of a guy he is, we've actually had one of the other gym members come and volunteer at our workouts because he was personally inspired by seeing this man with Down syndrome lifting and doing bench pressing, doing all the things that everyone else is doing. And I think we need exposure in the gym. I don't want to create programming that hides the people with Down syndrome away. And like, it's great that we're offering this programming, but it's got to be exposed so that people in the community can see. And like I said before, I'm really trying to fight that narrative of what people with Down syndrome can and cannot do. And I think if we saw people with Down syndrome in these community settings, we'd be really inspired to do more for them.
That's super powerful. Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. Well, before we close the podcast today, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't address on the podcast? I feel like we were pretty comprehensive, but you tell me.
I just think, like I said before, it's something that no matter where you're at in the physical health journey, that's the best place to start. It doesn't matter if it's something you decided to start at age 30 or you're age 5. I mean, the best thing you can do is start that and start developing those habits. I get this question, what's the best exercise to do? And the answer is anything that you can do that gets your heart rate up, that uses your whole body for 30 minutes. It doesn't matter if it's doing swimming, going for a walk, just dance videos on YouTube, anything that you can do for 30 minutes that gets your whole body working. That's the best exercise, because whatever it is, that means it's meaningful to that individual. And I don't want to fight anything that is getting them moving and getting them excited about exercise.
That's fantastic. Yeah, one thing I know personally, my brother has Down syndrome, and when he was a teenager, we built into his daily routine and a time for exercise every day. And even to this day now, he's in his late 40s. If I call him at his exercise time because I forget or whatever, he says, I can't talk right now. I'm doing my treadmill. And if you would have told me he would have said that when he was 15, I would have said there's no way, because he was not one that enjoyed exercise. But now it's become part of his routine. And I think that that's such an important point for us to recognize that it's never too late, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, Scott, you have totally inspired me. I feel like I need to go out and do something now. I think that my doctor would be very pleased to know that. But thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And to our listeners, if you ever have a podcast topic that you would like us to cover, or maybe you feel like you've got something that you think you would like to share with our community at large, please do reach out to me at Down Syndrome Center at chp.edu, and we'd be glad to communicate with you that way. If you'd like to join with us in the work that we're doing here at the center, including this podcast, please do go to givetochildrens.org/Down Syndrome Center, and we'd love to have you join on with everyone who's being a part of what we're doing. But until next time, bye-bye.